Irodu capital planet Ijik Lure. Rayudas all around him. The first hive. He hadn't been there long. He picked this space, this very little cavern, because every time he met with Sefigalo, it seemed like each member of every clutch of the hive would arrive, and they would all crowd into the meeting space as well, crawling all over one another to get closer, to hear what he would say, to smell each other, to rub against him, to smell him. It made him uncomfortable. Their numbers, their closeness was unnerving. So he began to arrange for meetings in ever smaller spaces, deeper and deeper in the cavern. It didn't work. They would all come anyway. He had to yell over the noise of their scrambling, over the noise of their leathery exoskeletons grinding, sliding, and scraping against one another as they jockeyed for the best position to see him, to hear him. Antenna caressed him. To smell him, to say it was annoying, would understate his discomfort by magnitudes. It had taken him a week to finally stop gagging at the stench of them, but he didn't know if he would ever get used to seeing them crawl and rub and slide all over one another like they did. In some way he couldn't articulate. The sight of them in a giant writhing mass seemed to make their smell worse. It was an experience he didn't think he would ever be able to forget. He would certainly never forget their smell, that peculiar, musky, heavy odor. There's a distant tugging at his thigh. Hey, fuckface! A kick lands on the sole of his foot. Krellikar wakes abruptly with a sharp inhale. The smell of Rayudas permeates the air. Their oppressive stink catches in the back of his throat, causes him to choke out a short, irritated cough. A stab of pain flashes through his cheek. Watery tears flood his right eye. That's right, up and at him. Krellikar isn't certain, but the speaker sounds human. Male. How'd you get on this boat? The word boat is punctuated with another kick to the foot. Krellikar's leg jerks away from the strike, causing that whole side of his body to explode with stinging aches. He tries, instinctively, to suppress the groan forced out of his mouth by the pain, and manages to reduce the noise to a short, strained grunt while his mind rapidly climbs its way back to consciousness. An electronic bleep rings loudly in the virtually empty corridor. "Oi! Nasiluo!" the kicking man says. "Come back!" Krellikar opens his eyes slowly and looks around without moving his head. He lies on his side now, parallel with the direction of the hall. When the kick to his foot woke him up, he thought for a moment he was back in the barracks at the great titanium wall of Basamarl. However, the weight of his body felt manageable. Therefore, he was not in Basamarl. Perhaps he wasn't even on Waghosha. His assailant said something about being on a boat, though Krellikar doesn't remember putting out to sea. A surging pain just above the middle of his brow causes him to close his eyes again. Pain like the beginnings of a hangover. He rolls slowly to his back, props himself up on an elbow, opens his eyes fully, and looks around with the hope that something in view will give him the answers a kick in the foot has not. The carpeted corridor, the short flight of stairs, the big blue-green 6 painted on the wall at the juncture of corridors. Ah, yes, the Nelaton Hauler. His eyes flick to his kicking assailant, a bipedal humanoid, although not exactly a man. Well, the creature's probably male, but he certainly isn't human, not with a short muzzle for a face capped with a dirty pink nose. The creature's ears sprout out from near the top of his head, and, apart from his long, muscular, hairless tail, the rest of what Krellikar can see of his exposed body, head and neck and hands, is covered in a short coat of gray fur interrupted by a host of badly healed scars. Evidently, this species is directly evolved from some type of rodent. The creature sports soft-form All-Tech vacuum boots with anti-puncture weave and magnetic mode by activation. Tucked into the top of the boots, dark green fashionable trousers made of some thin, durable cloth stretch upward. They billow out around the knee according to the style of the day. And snug about the rat man's waist, a wide utility belt cinches the green pants around a warm gray, long-sleeved crew shirt with fat dark buttons down the side. Krelikar's Hirazin Deal J99 Seish, the firearm modified and gifted to him by Basamaral's principal technician of the People's Corps of Engineers, rests, shoved into the front of the creature's belt, and the barrel of a particularly nasty-looking Datubu incapacitator points right at the little engineer's chest. Krelikar's hand whips over to the holster on his thigh in a brief moment of disbelief. No gun. He looks back up at his assailant with a frown. The creature gives the little engineer a humorless smirk, then turns his mouth closer to the transceiver clipped to the epaulette on his right shoulder. A thick, curly wire winds its way down from the bottom of the transceiver, dips under the creature's arm, and around to what Krelikar can only assume is the main unit on the back of the rodent's utility belt. Two-way radios. Smart. You can't track any member of the crew unless they happen to be transmitting, and even then, for only a short amount of time. Krelikar feels a growing chagrin at letting his haste make him sloppy. Waghosha be damned. He should never have been discovered so easily. Had this been one of Father's tests?
Go ahead,
the responding voice from the radio transceiver speaks with a strange accent and a tinny echo. Krelikar casually moves his hand over to his control bracelet to turn off the mute suit so he can be heard. He'll have to talk and act fast, and soon. The last thing he needs now is for more of the ship's crew to converge on this location. This is Umedit. The creature's eyes ease over to the transceiver on his shoulder, huge tail wagging casually. I'm on level 3 by...
Umedit?
Krelikar blurts out the creature's name.
It's me!
This last exclamation rises a few octaves as bright knives of agony light through Krelikar's cracked cheek. A tear slips from his eye. Umedit stops transmitting to throw a swift, puzzled look at Krelikar's face, as Krelikar decides to abandon diplomacy and presses a small button on the side of his control bracelet. In the microsecond before the rodent's mind can consider whether or not he does in fact know the intruder, lines of non-visible scanning lasers play across his eyes from a small lens on the upper part of Krelikar's phantom harness. In the next instant, multiple blasts of searing light follow the harness's scan to fry Umedit's retinas and overload his optic nerves faster than the poor creature can think. Almost a full second passes before the rodent's body processes the damage. Then... a guttural cry filled with surprise and pain and fear erupts from Umedit's mouth. Eyes shut tightly, his head jerks back and away from the attack as his neck twists into a pulsing tangle of protruding veins and hypertensed muscle. Agony mixes with terrified fury. Umedit screams balefully at being blinded, at being taken like a fool. With teeth grinding against the intensity of his injury and stumbling around with a growing rage, Umedit fires the Datubu incapacitator wildly, while his other hand instinctively covers his non-functional eyes to protect them from any more damage. Krelikar rolls to the other side of the corridor to avoid the shot to his chest just as he sees the pain register on Umedit's face. And indeed, the first wild blast from the Datubu incapacitator misses Krelikar's chest completely, landing instead squarely on the upper part of his arm. A million burning lances of unmitigated torment drill through muscle and tendon into the little engineer's bone. He clenches his teeth in an effort to control the pain, determined not to give himself away with any noise. His broken cheek is completely forgotten as he quickly but clumsily gains his feet. His arm hangs like a dead thing, a pitiful slab of flesh dangling from a disabled shoulder, a limp, painful liability, useless. An incapacitator shot whizzes by Krelikar's ear, taking his mind off his injury with the threat of worse pain. He lurches to his right out of surprise, slams roughly into the corridor wall. Howling fitfully at the fiery agony behind water-filled eyes, Umedit somehow hears the impact and swings the finely crafted Datubu weapon stiffly around to shoot at the noise. Krelikar, realizing his audible giveaway, rebounds off the wall to sprint directly at Umedit. Adrenaline pumping freely as he speeds into range, the little trembler ducks under the blinded creature's swinging arm and at the same time comes down with an overhead hammer fist to the top of his assailant's chest, expertly breaking the rat man's collarbone in two. Umedit lets loose a piercing scream at the lightning flash of pain from his newest injury. The arm with the incapacitator, still clasped in an iron grip, continues to swing, driving the jagged broken ends of his clavicle deeper into soft flesh. Umedit's screaming grows into a shrill, wailing shriek as Krellikar rises to deliver a devastating kick to the blinded creature's groin. Umedit falls to his knees in complete system shock. He can't breathe. He desperately wants to, but he just can't remember how. And with his vision gone, he can't even tell if he's still conscious. A hand closes over his hand, holding the gun. Feels like a touch in a dream. But the front of his head continues to burn from the inside, and a radio squawks incessantly from somewhere close by. He's fighting in Corridor 3 Blue 6. This is no dream. Nasiluo! Umedit frantically wants to yell. We got a hostile on board! A stowaway! But his free hand is nowhere near the radio, and all that comes out of his mouth is a breathy, pitiful moan. He moves to struggle with the intruder, but stops in mid-motion at the stabbing pain of his broken collarbone digging deeper into his chest. He gasps in shock and becomes remotely aware that the Tutubu incapacitator, still in his grip, is being pointed directly at his chest. A finger squeezes down over his own finger on the trigger. He manages a feeble, throaty, "No!" before a million burning lances of unmitigated torment tear through his heart, cleaving away all other mortal concerns. He flops down over his bent arm, hits the carpeted floor face first. His body spasms violently like a fish out of water as it fights to withstand the effects of the incapacitator on its core functions. Umedit's finger, caught in a rippling series of seizures, keeps squeezing the trigger on the Tutubu pistol, firing blast after debilitating blast into the left side of his chest. His long, hairless tail whips wildly about. "Umedit!" The two-way radio on his shoulder squawks loudly with another voice. Worried. Panicked. Human. Maybe. "Umedit! Repeat your location! Where? On level 3! This from the strangely accented, tinny little voice, sounding less panicked than steady, as if the being on the other end had long ago grown used to handling crises. "Repeat your location." Krellikar leans against the wall next to his defeated assailant, panting with exertion. He's just begun to hear the two-way radio again. He tunes it out, drops to a knee at Umedit's side. The adrenaline rush from the fight is ebbing fast, and Krellikar finds it increasingly more difficult to think about anything but the pain in his arm. He has to move swiftly before he tires any further. He tries to remember how long the paralysis is supposed to last from an incapacitator blast. His jaw clenches fiercely against its effects, but he can't recall the weapon's stats. At least the pain in his arm masks the pain in the rest of his body. He tries to smirk at that thought, but winces at the reawakened, broken thing in his face. "We're on our way!" the radio bleats. "Level 3! Krellikar checks Umedit's pulse. Wild, erratic. He'll be going into cardiac arrest soon. Hopefully, this isn't the ship's pilot. The radio continues to squawk. "We're on our way!" Forcing himself to move through his pain, Krellikar reaches under the unfortunate spasm-racked creature, opposite the nozzle of the incapacitator, and toggles on the weapon's safety. He then leans over Umedit's body and pulls at his far shoulder to turn him over. Umedit flops onto his side, then his body arcs in a severe spasm. He's almost completely rigid. Footsteps, radio screeching, someone yelling, coordinating a search. Krellikar retrieves his J99 Seiche from Umedit's belt, holsters it on his thigh, and pushes himself to his feet like a man 5 times his age. A carpet-dampened running echoes softly through the corridor. The footsteps are faint, which, to Krellikar's sensitive ears, means his new pursuers are still pretty far away, but they're definitely on this level. Also, the high concentration of that stuffy, rusty odor makes him certain that this is a Rayud ship. If not, there are definitely a few of them on board. Thoughts of Ijik Lur flash through his mind. He sincerely hopes the Rayudas are passengers, although Rayud Cruden might serve him better should he be discovered. That, however, would complicate things with the rest of the crew. Krellikar sighs. More complications are something he doesn't need. He gathers his gear, hobbles away from the approaching footsteps, and pauses. The ship is enormous. There's still a chance he can find one or more inconspicuous hiding spots and wait out the crew until they dock at a place where he can secretly disembark and find another ship going anywhere else. And although the rest of the crew may have heard Krellikar's shout, Umedit didn't actually get a chance to report that a stowaway was on board. Krellikar's voice would be a mystery. A moment of thought passes. The little engineer's mind shuts out all distractions, as it always does whenever he thinks his way around a problem. With the proper setup, this little corridor mishap could give the rest of the crew enough of an explanation for them to dismiss any thoughts of intruders, stowaways, or foul play. It would simply be an unfortunate accident. Back at Umedit's side, Krellikar rummages quickly through the rodent's utility belt and finds a mobile entertainment unit. He tosses it convincingly half a meter away, struggles briefly with Umedit's vibrating, shifting weight, and manages to push him back over onto his stomach. He bends the arm with the Dutubu incapacitator up under Umedit's chest, toggles the safety off, and steps back with a pain-filled wince to measure the scene. Looks believable enough. It'll have to do. Krellikar turns to go and stops dead in his tracks. At the other end of the hall, rounding the corner on 6 multi-jointed legs, a Rayud. Its thick, leathery, armor-plated body arches like a horseshoe, open end down. The top of its back stands close to 2 meters off the ground. Its large, armored head snakes out of an opening at the front end of its curving, armored back on a thick, muscular neck, almost level with and low to the floor. In addition to the neck, 2 multi-jointed legs support the large head's weight, each one growing out at an angle from either side of the front of its face. The creature's other 4 multi-jointed legs, 2 on each side of its body, support the Rayud from the small bulb of its pelvis angled up and away from the rear of its downward arching body. Sprouting from the very front of its head, on either side of the complex sucker that serves as the creature's mouth, are 2 longer-than-body-length antennae. They project forward, then curve down to trail back under the Rayud's 3.5-meter-long body, ending just behind its rearmost, bristly tarsi. The creature swishes its antenna back and forth on the floor between its wide-set legs in a severely agitated fashion. Its 5 helmeted eyes rapidly take in the scene, then narrow on the intruder with lethal focus. Its 2 arms unfold from the high arch of its middle. Blade-like fingers stretch and flex as they open at the ends of armor-plated hands. Krellikar takes a step back. Ah, shit, he says under his breath, his tone defeated. He's taken way too long with Umedit. He slowly draws his J-99 Seish and throws it off to his right. Ages ago, when he was still on Ijik Lur, he swore a Rayud oath. One of the few oaths in his life he intends to keep. He holds his right hand up, palm out toward the creature. "Wait!" he begins with a wince at his broken cheek. The Rayud cuts him off. "Murderer!" it yells with its strange accent, and not bothering to draw its own sidearms, it launches forward into an all-out charge. Krellikar hobbles backward as he tries to explain. "It was in self-def—" He doesn't get to finish. The Rayud closes the distance impossibly fast, retracts its head, and brutally rams into him with the forward bow of its armored back. The little engineer goes soaring through the air and lands hard at the top of the short flight of stairs just behind Umedit. Before Krellikar can do more than recover his breath, the Rayud is on him again. He's rarely seen one so enraged. Its every move aims to kill. It takes everything Krellikar has left in him to avoid the creature's lethal blows with just his one functioning arm. He scooches, kicks, scoots and jerks, jumps, twists, pushes and flops like an earthworm on a hot plate. But he knows he can't keep this up for long. With all that he's been through today, he knows he'll tire sooner rather than later. And unless he thinks of something, he'll be dead soon. A drop of liquid from the creature's pulsing sucker splatters on the collar of his phantom harness and begins to sizzle. The Rayud is preparing to vomit. The rush of terrible understanding that follows this observation sweeps all of Krellikar's more sophisticated thoughts from his mind. He screams his oath at the top of his lungs, in fluent Irodun, the Rayud tongue. The Rayud attacking him pauses. Krellikar looks directly into the creature's eyes, reaches up to slowly caress its mandibular scent gland in a gesture of solidarity known only to Rayud kind, and slowly, meaningfully raises his arm to obscure the creature's vision in reference to a well-worn Rayud parable about finding truth in the absence of sight. I am a silent knife, Krellikar repeats the beginning of his oath, pronouncing each word distinctly and still with quite a bit of volume. The Rayud shifts its weight, moves the front of its head under Krellikar's arm to look straight at his face, then shifts its weight again. Now that the creature has assumed a more civilized bearing, Krellikar calms. His eyelids sag as his excitement fades, and as exhaustion renews its drain on his condition, he feels the warm, emotional comfort of being with family, something he hasn't felt for far too long. My blade cuts for the life of the hive, he continues. It practically sounds like a sigh. He lays his head on the carpeted floor and exhales heavily, utterly spent. Shooting pains crisscross through his face. Spasms of pure torture dig into his arm, but they are as loud noises, barely heard through the ever-thickening wall of his fatigue. He closes his eyes. I am the life of the hive, he murmurs, and finds he is too tired to speak another word. Hopefully, that is enough. Hopefully, the Rayud won't kill him. Hopefully, unconsciousness takes him. The Rayud waves its antenna around on top of him, caresses his form, reads his scent. After several tense moments, it stops, retreats a step or two, and tilts its head to the side. It speaks.
Son of Chio?